from the studios of the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg. Welcome to Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs.
Greetings, St. Martin. I am Silveria Jacobs, your Prime Minister, and this is Prime Minister Talks. Today's episode is focused on elections. And with us, we have our guest today, Ms. Natalie Tackling, who is the new chair of the Central Voting Bureau. Natalie, welcome to Prime Minister Talks.
Thank you for having me.
It's always my pleasure. Maybe you could give a little background, because I said you're the new chair, but you were on the Central Voting Bureau before.
I was not.
No, this is your first time.
I was not, yeah.
Oh, you weren't the chair, right? That's what it was.
I wasn't on the board. It's my first election, let's put it that way. And taking over, I guess, from the very capable hands of Jason Rogers, who people are used to seeing in front of the camera and relating to elections. So for me, really, the first time organizing an election, the first time seeing everything that goes on, behind an election.
Right.
And I'm sure we'll get to that shortly. So I'm excited and for what we're going to do.
And what is your background? Because I know your background, but for the viewers who may be meeting you for the first time, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Essentially, kind of born and raised here to the extent. And, the passport says something different, but regardless, grew up here, went to Sister Regina MPC and an attorney by profession. So moved back, as soon as I had finished graduating and to kind of give back and to contribute back to the island, that raised me.
Right. So daughter of the soil, and definitely someone, I think, as a person with a legal background, quite capable of carrying out the laws to ensure we have a free, fair election on St. Martin as usual. How do you feel about the challenge?
We've taken it head on, kind of grabbed the bull by the horns, and I think we've kind of hit the ground running, so to speak. I had a conversation with your staff saying the election crept up on us. So
even though we knew it was coming,
it's just before you know it, it's we're in full swing, I think, and we're all moving at a rapid pace to make sure everything goes off flawlessly from the outside.
Right. So are there any other projects that you have going outside of the elections?
With the voting bureau, that is?
Yeah.
Okay, not me personally. And, outside of the election, no. Outside of the elections, pretty much not. We're very much focused on the elections itself. The voting bureau has a very designated and clear role within the electoral ordinance, which is that we carry out the electoral ordinance and everything that has to do with the elections themselves.
Right. And so I could remember in the beginning, people were already clamoring, like, when is this going to happen? When is that going to happen?
Yeah.
Kind of like take the public back to, all those steps that had to be taken prior to establishing a date.
Absolutely. I think our first contact was back in June or July of this year, and when everybody was kind of like, what's happening? And the electoral ordinance itself sets out a timeline, basically of, when dates have to happen.
Right.
So, we calculate back. Essentially, we look at, the sitting term of Parliament is decided in the Constitution. It says 4 years. So we know, the 10th of February, 2024. And then we calculate back. So we do all this complicated math and making sure that all the dates fit, because it's, the election date is 90 days from this date. And then another date is 48 days between 90 days. So it's
a lot of back and forward.
It's a lot of back and forward, ensuring that you allow sufficient time for all the legal requirements to take place. And I know we had multiple discussions about making all the dates fit and allowing, the legal requirements to be in place.
Yeah, so I was hoping that it could be later in January, with the holidays and everything else. Yeah. And with the full term, we had to literally stick with the dates. And I think people are so used to snap elections that also then plays a role. But because it's not a snap election, we know that the 4 years ends on this date, and then everything had to be calculated backwards from there.
Exactly.
Who were some of the stakeholders that you had to, or we, let's say, had to consult? So besides myself and you, who are some of the key stakeholders in the preparation?
I think a lot of people indeed don't realize, who our key stakeholders are, being, the Parliament is one that's important to take along into the process, and think one of the very important ones that maybe a lot of people don't realize is the civil registry. And I myself didn't realize, I think,
how big a role they play,
and how much work they put in behind the scenes is incredible. And I have a lot of respect and I'm very grateful for all the work that they do.
Yes.
So, for us, I think those were the most important players. And of course, your ministry, as the ministry in charge.
Yeah. I must say, civil registry is impressive. They are a well-oiled machine. They know when they have to order everything. And legal affairs as well, actually. So both civil registry and legal affairs played a big role in us ensuring we established the dates properly. Of course, the decrees had to be signed off on, etc. And all of that was done in ample time. So I thank you also, even as a first-timer, for your contributions in making that a clean process. It was really everybody collaborating well. In terms of civil registry's role, and a lot of people panicking, deregistration, and or what are this process too, in even the sharing of the voting cards, which are ready, which are printed, and everyone will get theirs. What do you think about the manner in which that is being done?
You just said that they're a well-oiled machine, and what I have noticed, at least for the civil registry, is their willingness to always accommodate and help the public. And even during during endorsement day, I noticed, someone had come in to have their son endorse a list, and it turned out that he had been deregistered. But I saw them kind of like assist and help in that to ensure that was resolved, so that this young man could endorse a list, and that also he would be eligible to vote during the election. So I think with them very much there's a lot of willingness to help.
Yes, I think we really have to break any myth that this government or Central Voting Bureau or Civil Registry or any of the stakeholders would purposefully remove persons or, remove their ability to vote. So ensuring that you are registered is your responsibility. These situations allow you to see it ahead of time, but you always get the opportunity to re-register once you're on the island. So I know several people have complained to me, and once they heard that once they're on island, those who are off island, once you're back, you can re-register and you will get your voting card. You'll be able to get a voting card to be able to vote come election time. It's very, very important, I think, that we do that. And we will continue to do what we need to do to ensure that everyone who's eligible to vote gets to vote. Because, with so many elections that we've had over the years, waiting 4 years, people, I think, are a little more geared up and ready to go. Yes.
It's been a while since they got to circle that red.
The dot red.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvia Jacobs.
Hey, what's up?
Girl, I heard you moved.
Yeah, I have, but I haven't reached the civil registry to change my address yet.
Did you know, according to the law, you have 5 working days to change your address after moving?
The changing of address can be done in 2 ways. 1, making an appointment where you appear in person at the civil registry. 2, sending an email to burkazakhan@stmartingov.org. What is required to change your address? A valid identification such as a passport, ID card, or driver's license, the deed of property if you're the owner, a lease agreement if you're renting, a GB utility bill, or the permission form from the landlord or property owner, including their identification. Who can change an address? A person who is 18 years or older. For minors, both parents have to give consent. Failure to register your change of address can result in a fine. For more information, please contact the Civil Registry Department at 721-542-0652 or email us at burkazakhan@stmartingov.org. We are located at the Government Administration Building, Swaliga Road, number 1, Phillipsburg, St. Martin.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvia Jacobs.
Welcome back to Prime Minister Talks. I'm here today with Natalie Tackling, the head of the Central Voting Bureau. I keep saying main voting bureau, but the Central Voting Bureau of St. Martin that is charged with the organization of elections. It is her first time chairing, and so it's a learning experience for you. What would you say, before we go to that, we were just talking before the break about the incident of, someone being deregistered and having the ability to re-register. So I just want to reiterate that that is possible. And that if it's, even though the list, what do you call it? The voters registry is closed, that persons who are eligible to vote can re-register. And if the card isn't issued yet, they can get it issued. The court can give that order, even on the day of election, to be able to allow you the ability to vote. So don't miss any opportunities, and we will be ensuring that you have more opportunities to get your ID cards, etc., in order as well, because I think that's very important. So what are some of the challenges that you have experienced in your first time as, we can be honest, in your first time in this journey as the head of the Police Bureau?
I don't know that I would call them, challenges per se. I think, it's been a learning experience. And as the current board of the Central Voting Bureau, with the exception of two of our members, it's the first time for all of us. And there's not, as we say, a dry book or anything that you can open and say, okay, what are exactly the things I have to do? So you're very much, figuring it out as you're going along and as the ball starts rolling. And previous members have told me, once the ball starts rolling, it starts rolling, and then you with it. And I didn't understand it until the ball started rolling, and now I get it. And I'm like, oh yeah, we in this, and it all makes sense. And I think, as we were saying before, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that you're not even cognizant of, that I think that once you really get into the process, it all starts to click. And
what are some of those things? What are some of the parts that, say, the general public, you weren't even aware of prior to being part of this organization?
I think even like the little things where it comes down to the work that the civil registry puts in and how far in advance they've already started working. And, I went in, I think 2 weeks ago, and they were already sitting there at, 7:00 at night, printing and folding voting cards and checking all the names and dividing them per district. And there's so many manual checks that go into ensuring the accuracy. And, you get a voting card, you don't realize what went into it exactly. So I think those are some examples. And even now with postulation, all the kind of very particular work that goes into checking all the lists, making sure that they're in order, ensuring that all the timelines, we have a 2-page Excel sheet with lots of cells with all these important deadlines of all these things that are supposed to happen legally or be published by a certain date or put out announcements. And it's just a lot of moving parts. And I think that those are the things that we don't realize, or even now gearing up for, the designing the ballots, ordering the ballots in time, making sure that we have everything that we need for the booths, for the polling stations.
I think that's a good place to stop and go back, because we just had postulation day and endorsement day. And I know there was some confusion, at least by one or two of the new parties, as to what, that is. So for public that may not understand, what is postulation or nomination day really? And then what does the law prescribe for the endorsement?
Sure. So essentially, postulation day is the day that all eligible parties, so by eligible, I mean if you have been registered with the Electoral Council as a political party prior to the cutoff, which was October 11th. So if you are a validly registered party, then that is the day that you may submit your candidate list to the voting bureau. And then from there, of course, there are lots of requirements that go into what needs to be on these lists. But from that, the law also says that every candidate list has to be endorsed by 1% of the validly cast votes in the previous election. So last election, I think we had something around like 13,300 valid votes that were cast. So which means that this year a party needed to have 134 signatures on their list, or as an endorsement. And however, then the law also says that if your party won a seat in the previous election, then you're exempted from that. So we saw the new parties, or resurrected parties. They, even though they did previously have seats, they didn't have, seats in the last parliamentary election. So that's, the endorsement day that we all know. And we saw a lot of supporters outside the government building yesterday with all their shirts and flags. And yeah, like I said, we're very much already in the season.
Yes, for sure. So the nomination or postulation day was on the 22nd. Yep. Each party had to come to Parliament where you sat with the entire team, hand it in. And I must say thank you to DCOM for the great coverage of that. As party leaders, we all got the opportunity to give a few words. And I think the general public who weren't able to be there still could get a feeling of what nomination day is. It's the start of the campaign, actually, because as of the 22nd at midnight, campaigning could start. So it's on, definitely. And then on the 23rd, the opportunity to endorse. So that, I think, went a lot smoother than in previous years because only one list could be endorsed per person. Like
that was always.
Yes, but sometimes it was a little difficult to check. And you would always hear like, oh, that person endorsed more than one list. But I was really updated that they put
there are systems in place. Yeah. And that's again, my kudos again to the Civil Registry. Apparently I'm the champion of the Civil Registry today. But yeah, they had a great system in place where once they put your name and your ID card in, the system will not allow that person to endorse another list. So there were those checks and balances this time. And so to ensure that, it could only just be one. I know there were some rumors going around yesterday that some people endorse more than one list, but I know for a fact that was not possible.
And that's why I said it, because I wanted to be sure. And if any of the parties, I know all of the parties were able to get, the new parties and the resurrected ones, as you call them, were able to get their lists endorsed. So they had at least 134 signatures. But say, for instance, that hadn't been the case, would they have gotten an opportunity the following day to do that still?
Yes, they are. And, like I mentioned, there are multiple things that we check the candidate list for. And one of them is the endorsements. It's also seen as a default in your list if you don't have those. So the law allows that if the person does not have the required amount of signatures, that then they're given a second day in which they have the same period between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to still try to gather those signatures.
Okay. Well, it wasn't necessary this time around. So that's a blessing indeed. And we'll be able to share further information. I really would like to encourage people to continue to follow DCOM because we're really going to ramp up the communications surrounding elections as we move forward. It's time for another break again. So if you want to have some more information from our now professional at running elections, Miss Natalie Tackling, come back. This is Prime Minister Talks.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
St. Martin, listen up. The Civil Registry Department has taken 7 services online. That's right, you can now request a family tree, local address change, migration deregistration, a registration form, request for existing certificates, transfer your driver's license, and a driver's license declaration, all online. Go to services.stmartingov.org/civil registry and easily complete a request form for the service that you need. You can also pay for the services online using a major credit card or debit card and receive certain final products digitally as well. No traffic jams, no waiting in lines. And if you're on island or off, you now have full digital access to 7 civil registry services at services.stmartingov.org/civil registry. That's services.stmartingov.org/civil registry. For more information, call 542-0652. Now go online and request your service form today.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
Welcome back to Prime Minister Talks. We're having a very interesting conversation with the chairlady of the Central Voting Bureau to be updated on all of the tasks, the hard work in collaboration with Civil Registry, especially at this point, that is taking place in preparation for the general elections, parliamentary elections on January 11th, 2024. So the lists have been handed in. They've been endorsed. What's next for the Central Voting Bureau?
Next, we diligently check all these lists against the legal requirements. And then we allow parties a period of time in which they can cure any defaults that are in the list. So that deadline is December 1st. And after that, we have a public meeting in which we officially validate the list for the upcoming election.
That they're validated.
Correct. So and at that moment, the decision is made or not. So, I had a question recently where it was like after the endorsement saying, also, now all the parties can contest. And I was like, well, no, they can contest once we have actually, kind of decreed that they're valid.
Right.
So that's next. And then, of course, after that, what I think maybe some people might find interesting is, we do have a public meeting again where parties get to choose their colors and their numbers. And when I say the colors and the numbers, of course, they have the colors they campaign with, but these colors are the colors that are on the ballot itself, along with the number in which they end up on the ballot.
And when you say public meeting, it's something that will be televised.
Correct. Yeah. So it's open to the public. The public is welcome to come. The parties are welcome to come. And it will be televised through the government page.
Great. So we can all look forward to that. And that will happen after the 1st of December.
Correct.
So we'll get more announcements and look forward to that from the Central Voting Bureau. And on election day itself, what are some of the main tasks that the main Central Voting Bureau will be executing?
It starts at least for the chair quite early in the morning. I had this conversation with the members. They were like, oh, we start at 8. I was like, well, I start at 5, because that's when, everybody leaves the government building with all the ballots and they're handed over, sealed to the different polling stations. And then there's actually a police escort to ensure that there's no tampering with the ballots and the like. So the day starts very early there. And then, of course, as voting bureau, we are ensuring that we're visiting all the polling stations to ensure that everything is in place. Of course, we do an inspection the night before. But during the day, you're also going by to make sure that everything is going according to plan, that there are no incidents, and we continue to monitor the process throughout the day.
Nice. I know from previous elections, we do see that the governor also comes around, etc. And it's good. And people have been asking about election observers. Are you in contact with any?
So far, of course, we welcome any election observers. I think that we have reached out to some through the civil registry and previous contacts. So we're waiting to hear back to see if any come. And of course, but that's part of the transparency in our electoral process is that we facilitate and welcome any international observers into our process.
Good. That's good to know because, that's how we are here. We trust the outsiders sometimes more than, but I must say in what I've experienced in the last election and in this one, we're very, very professional as government's organization in ensuring that everything is done meticulously. In fact, I told Kathy of Civil Registry to ensure that the training takes place, that the same thing is happening at all polling stations, because that usually creates confusion and that was allowed there and that isn't allowed there. Really go through the guidelines and so on and what's allowed, what's not allowed, so that we can all feel free to come out and cast our votes. So you're new. And one thing I like about having some younger blood coming into not just government, but things like the main voting bureau, Central Voting Bureau, is what kind of improvements would you like to see just off the bat? Like things that you see, okay, we could do this differently next time.
Yeah. I mean, besides looking at the process itself, I think maybe just at the organization, and one of the ones that I would like to champion is there's confusion all the time between what the Electoral Council does and what the Central Voting Bureau does. And I think we would maybe be served by merging both bodies. And
yes,
I think there would be so many beautiful things that the Central Voting Bureau could do with more budget. And because, we really only kick in and get a budget just purely for the elections. And, I keep getting asked, where's your office? Where's your website? I'm like, oh,
we don't have any of that.
And, but I do think that the Voting Bureau in that sense, in that build, can be used as a beautiful educational platform for the St. Martin public,
yes.
To educate people about the electoral process, to go out into the schools, to go out into the different districts, and outside of election times, that there's just an independent source for everything to do with the electoral process.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a really great thing, and that would be an improvement that I would love to see. And of course, then we, as a government, as a parliament, those decisions need to be made of, do we want to task this body with different tasks? We keep getting a lot of advice requests, and, I constantly have to tell you I'm not an advisory body and the law doesn't allow me to. But I think, again, with sufficient funding and manpower, and that you could make, the entity do a bit more.
Right.
So I think that those are certainly improvements.
But it's and definitely where the advice comes in is as a stakeholder, when the legislation changes, you're the ones that have to really execute it. So with all of the changes that are being proposed, the Raad van Advies, the Council of Advice is asking, what does the main voting bureau say about it? So, as a good administrator, I pass that information on. And with the recent change of removal of the curtains, we did also get your feedback as a central voting bureau, and it was approved. So hopefully we'll go into force.
It is, right? I saw I think the end of December.
Yes. So hopefully we'll go into force in time. And it's another attempt to create a more transparent process. Of course, you still have your stemgeheim, your what do you call that in English? Voters secrecy. And, you just keep your ballot, in front of you, and then no one from the back should be able to tell. And furthermore, the members of the polling station are trained, they're impartial, they do all their voting before anyone comes in, and they're not allowed to show any preference to anyone. So it's really, I think, it should be an improvement, and I hope that we're all able to go through it smoothly, because you know how we are with change. Yes. Do you have anything further on that to say? And then any closing words to the people of St. Martin regarding preparations for elections?
When it comes to, I think the removal of the curtain, and of course we're seeing that as a first step, and I think as a voting bureau, we certainly applaud, these measures taken by government, and we remain as an active stakeholder as a part of that. And what I would really, I think, like to encourage people at least is to really go out and vote on January 11th. And, it is our democratic right, and people around the world have fought for centuries to have that right and to be able to contribute. So I think it's super important that everybody goes out, educates themselves, choose the right candidates, think about what you want to see in this country, and go out and cast your vote.
Thank you so much, Natalie. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have you here. And hopefully, as we go along the election trail, that you can bring further information, or we'll have the public sessions anyway that people will be able to follow. I'd like to add my thank you. I'd like to add my encouragement to the people of St. Martin. Voting is a sacred right by some people, especially we as women. We also had to come on board and fight for a long time after men were able to vote, to be able to express ourselves. And when I checked the demographics, there are more women voters than men. So you can make the difference. Your voice should be heard in that vote. And that also counts. The valid votes count toward, or all the votes, I think, count toward the, you call it the recital and all these other things. So we definitely need to come back to talk about all those things. And I would like to continue to encourage you to tune in to the Department of Communications Gov pages, all of our communication platforms. We will be bringing lots of information to you, hopefully in more than one language as well, so that we get the attention of all the persons who must come out and vote. So until then, I'm Prime Minister Sylveria Jacobs, and I look forward to seeing you on Election Day.